Welcome. You've clicked yourself onto Three Guys and an iPad, perhaps the only element of the mortgage industry not targeted by the president recently in his State of the Union address. I'm Brian Rieger, co founder of Content Beacon and principal of True Impact Communications. And as always, we wouldn't be Three Guys without our friends. The first is my friend and co founder of Content Beacon, Rick Grant. Rick, how the hell are you today?
Good. Good to be here, Brian.
Good to be here with you as well. And then we wouldn't be the Three Guys without our friend from Austin, Texas, a 45-year mortgage origination vet and certified mortgage banker, Kevin Breeland. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Brian. How are you and Rick today?
I'm doing okay. Can't speak for Rick, but he looks pretty good, I guess. So,
Yeah.
All right.
He does look good, especially with all that gray in his beard.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and shift topics immediately here. We've got a big topic to hit today. But before we do that, this is the part where I make a shameless plug for Content Beacon, the premier B2B content marketing agency in the industry. If you're a wholesaler trying to reach brokers, warehouse lender to correspondent, lender to realtor, and we're going to talk a lot about realtors today. Want to do a blog, want to do a podcast like this, case studies, etc., we're the folks to call. So also, if you have any guest ideas, if you'd like to see someone on the show, if you've got a topic we should be discussing, contact us. And it never hurts if you hit the little thumb in the corner of your YouTube channel, either preferably the one pointing up. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce two very special guests today. Our first is our first-time guest. He is the president of the National REO Brokers Association, CEO of Rio Genesis and House Karma, and a longtime real estate broker himself. Welcome, Mr. Michael Krein.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun, Mike. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, we're going to have a friend of Michael's and a friend of the show, a friend of all of ours, I'm pretty sure, except maybe the CFPB. He is the managing attorney of the
Sterbcow. I got talking to this again. I'm sorry. I started.
I know what's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Sterbcow. Marx, how are you, sir?
Doing fantastic. Super excited.
Would we like to talk about any collections issues or anything today?
You know, I'm still waiting for the check. Still waiting for these appearance fees.
I Venmo'd you, Mark Sterbcow at number 3, right?
Yeah, that's it. I'll re-forward that back to you.
Folks, by the way, it's Marx, M-A-R-X. Please don't get that confused. All right, let's get going here. We've got some very serious business to attend to. If you've been living under a rock for the last year or so, you're probably not aware that NAR has recently settled several of his class action lawsuits, and we have a major change coming to the real estate industry, or do we? And that's what we have our guests here for today. I'm going to jump right in with the first question, the elephant in the room. Guys, what does the recent NAR-Burnett settlement mean? Loaded question.
It is, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
That's what I want. Let's start, Mike. We're going to start with you.
You have legal ramifications, which I'm going to leave to Marx because that's his specialty. What you have that nobody really understands yet or will grasp is you have a change in consumer behavior. The consumer is now aware of how realtors really get paid, how much they actually make. And now the consumers, there's a lot more transparency for them, which is going to alter the decision-making process and the behavior process. Whether or not they even choose to use realtors and agents anymore on the buying side especially is going to get very interesting very quickly.
Marx? Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of the overall industry, I think it's going to create, and I'm already starting to see it, it's going to create significant consolidation in the industry, and not just on the real estate brokerage side or real estate agents. It's going to create consolidation among lenders, non-bank lenders, title companies, title insurance underwriters. Because right now you have a ton of different referral sources. Those numbers are going to shrink up significantly. And that compression is going to come in and knock some, force some consolidation in the industry.
So that sounds like 2 votes for major seismic industry changing shift. Kevin or Rick, and these are just a 30,000-foot overview, guys. We're going to dig into this a lot more deeply, but any other thoughts, Kevin or Rick?
The only thought that I have on it right now is, all of these things, when they start coming together, regardless of what the issue is. You have one group way far on one side, another group way far on the other side, and a very, very small group in the middle, which everything ends up being somewhere in the middle. It's going to be interesting how it ends up, as far as, is it going to be way to one side or way to the other, or actually something in the middle, and then how the GSEs will react to that, because then that could add another component to this entire shakeup, if we want to call it that for right now, as to what it may look like industry wide going forward. So I think that's going to be another interesting component to be added to it as we go down the road.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you take a close look, Brian, at what NAR agreed to, it's not a lot of change, but it's a kind of significant change, because it adds a little bit of transparency, and the unintended consequence to that is always confusion on the part of consumers. So we're covering this story pretty closely at Weekly Real Estate News. Phil Hall's been doing a fantastic job writing about the developments as they occur, but the real story is in the comments. The overflowing anger and frustration among NAR members and others is incredible. We've never seen this many comments on the story that we've put up there before. So until all that dies down, we're not going to really, I don't think, get a really clear picture of what's going to change. But man, it's created some very angry people in the short term.
Interesting. Well, that makes a good segue, Rick. Let's get down to the tactical. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a broker right now. What kind of changes should I be preparing for? What should I be doing right now? And is this an opportunity? In fact, some say that with change comes opportunity. So I'm going to make this a toss up to the panel. I'm a realtor. What needs to be on my plate right now?
You learn some new job skills. I would start practicing. May I supersize that for you?
Outstanding. Outstanding.
The contraction Marx was speaking about is at a corporate level. The bottom line is, it doesn't really matter what the courts say or what NAR does anymore. We're going to be driven by the consumer. What does the consumer choose to do? If the consumer chooses to continue using realtors, life goes on. If the consumer says, hey, the average sales price is $400,000, I'm the buyer, I have to pay $12,000 to somebody who took a 40-hour course to help me get a house, or can I do this on my own? That's the question.
We have heard talk of disintermediation before, though, Mike, and so far the realtor seems to have stood tall. Are there other factors at play here, or what comes next?
Well, the reason people use realtors when they purchase a home is because NAR spent 40, 50 years and hundreds of millions of dollars telling them they had to.
True.
Plain and simple. That was NAR's goal, was to promote realtors, and the fact that you need one. Whether you do or not is up to the consumer to decide at this point. Point
taken. Marx, you look like you have something to add there.
Yeah, I think that, look, there's, as someone said earlier, there's going to be winners and losers off this. And I think one of the biggest losers off the whole 9 yards next to NAR are the MLSs. So what are the MLS's value proposition now? Their whole value proposition before this settlement was to allow brokers to just, put the commissions up and kind of show what the commission's being offered. And it's that cooperative brokerage sort of commission aspect of it. With that gone, I don't really see a real positive thing, or not positive. I don't see a real value proposition that the MLSs actually are now going to provide. And with that said, the biggest winner off this is CoStar and Homes.com. That by and away is going to be the new MLS, in my opinion, over the next few years, if not sooner. The CoStar piece is one that is not discussed, and when people are really kind of missing the boat on it. CoStar, which owns LoopNet, which owns apartments.com and owns homes.com, among many other URLs that it owns. They've invested around, from what I understand, about $2.3 billion over the last few years in research and analytics and AI and different technologies. And so you're moving that level of data collection and aggregation together, and you're bringing that into the residential sector, which really hasn't been there. The MLSs have had that. And so with that level of data gathering now basically almost monopolizing the full real estate spectrum from commercial to apartments to residential, that's enormous from my vantage point. And their model is different too, to where they allow the agents to list their properties on their site for free, or at least that's from what I understand the new model that they're headed towards. And then as consumers start looking at homes.com, the interaction will be, hey, if you want to look at this house, you contact directly to the listing agent. So I think that's going to have a big impact on buyers and where they head in the marketplace and who gets contacted first versus these websites, these web portals that I won't name who they are, but you had a lot of large websites and portals that were dedicated or allocated towards buy-side leads. The buy-side lead is really going to be crunched economically, in my opinion. It's not going to go away, but it's going to be crunched. And so I think what you'll see is a new consumer behavior where they go directly to the listing agent. For the most part, not always, but for the most part, I think we will see that where they just go directly to them, and you'll have dual agents and dual brokerage aspects of this going forward to represent the buyers. It's certainly going to impact those first-time home buyers who are looking for that neutral party or that party to help represent them. I think that's really going to go by the wayside. And one of the most important parts to this as well is the economics to all this. So the economics for the real estate brokerage, and I want to say it's been a couple of years since I've seen the last study, but I think it was around $229 was the average profit per transaction for a real estate brokerage. Well, when you start whittling away the buy side commission, those numbers go down significantly. And that means that a lot of these companies aren't going to be able to sustain themselves unless they create a lot of affiliated businesses to help offset those losses. But even those losses are so significant, they're going to have to do something else. And I think that's the commission splits are going to change. And they're going to change into the broker's benefit going forward. I mean, there's a lot of different changes, but that's what I see so far.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you one follow-up question about something you said about homes.com. Is it a coincidence that company bought 4 Super Bowl ads for about, $28 million, less than a month before the settlement came out?
You mean their $2 billion marketing and advertising campaign blitz?
Yeah.
That wasn't coincidental. Well, not at all. They knew what was coming down the pipe. They did. I mean, the government has effectively created an oligarchy of a real estate portal. So, I mean, that is, like I said, that is who the major winner of all this is.
So I was going to add something to that, or ask something in that effect, that, being a senior citizen now and eating dinner at 5 o'clock and going to bed at 8 p.m., you see a lot of home.com ads on television, really appealing to the 20 to 30 somethings. And I thought I'm certain it's not a coincidence that's all started since the settlement was first announced way back when, before the money settlements were being done. I'd just like to get your thought on that as well. How far in advance do you think they've been working on this?
They've been working on it for a long time in advance of this, in anticipation of this. In fact, it's my understanding, I believe this month, the data show next month when they pull the data, that homes.com will be the largest real estate portal website in the United States. It's gonna surpass Zillow. It's already surpassed everybody else. They're number 2. I think last month their numbers were 148 million unique visitors for the month. Zillow the month before that had 180 million uniques, and its numbers were declining significantly. This will be the month we'll see that major transition. And I was talking to someone earlier today, very much in the same situation, the same fast moving rapid rate of transformation that we saw with when Trulia came into the game, and Zillow and some of those operations where they started really cultivating those buy side leads. And you saw how quickly that changed the industry from a consumer home search sort of thing. You're going to see the same thing. It's instead of buy side, it's going to the sell side.
So to follow up on that, I have a question. Since we may see a lot more dual agency representation now, how, as a broker, would you educate your realtors to deal with that, so that everybody can be represented, equally and positively?
It's a good question, and I think that's where we're going to have a lot of chaos in the industry, because you're going to have people that aren't taking the settlement seriously, and think, oh, it's the same thing. We'll do this and we'll do that, and there will be some significant change in that dynamic. From what was it? What was your question? I kind of lost a train of thought. I know what your question was.
The dual agency issue. Yeah.
I think what you're going to see
is a problem in about 10 states. You got to keep that in mind. I think 10 states you can't touch that. You can't do transactional dual in about 10 states.
Yeah.
So they're going to have, you've got legal issues all around on this as well that haven't been addressed yet.
Yeah, what brought me to that is Alaska is one of those states that don't allow dual agencies because of some lawsuits back in the mid-2000s that they believe the consumer wasn't being represented properly in a dual agency situation. So I wasn't sure how many other states had those types of provisions in place and how this could have an effect on that as well.
My suspicion is that the legislatures are going to be forced to change the laws to get rid of the dual agency piece. I think there's going to be too much pressure there for them not to. As far as the agents go, though, I do foresee the agents forming large listing agent teams. In fact, correct. I'm seeing that now across the United States, and these large listing agent teams will have junior level real estate agents who will charge either a flat fee, $500 to $1,500 to represent the buyer, or a per service charge fee. If you do this, you open the lockbox, it's $50, or an hourly fee. But that's where I see, from the brokerage standpoint, you're going to see these massive listing agent teams with again, junior level real estate agents for the most part, representing the buyer. But I mean, this isn't going to be overnight. You'll see this. This is going to take a little bit of time to ferret through. But I think one of the other issues, one of the major issues that we're also seeing too, is that there is no advocate right now for the real estate brokerage industry or real estate agents or really for the financial services sector that's being impacted here. Because without an advocate, a lot of these companies were sued. And so it was lockdown mode by the attorneys not to say anything. It was lockdown mode by the MLSs not to give any information or any guidance. Lockdown mode by NAR. And so when you have that, you've allowed the plaintiff's attorneys to come out and create this incredible narrative. And that narrative, quite honestly, has already started taking root in the way that consumers are interacting right now with their list, with listing agents, and whether they even want to give compensation to a buy side agent.
Can I jump in on this? Because it's kind of interesting what Marx just said. Okay. What we're seeing is the industry come full circle. It used to be, before the Clear Cooperation, I'm going way back, the listing agent was the only one allowed to advertise or market a property. And you used to see, even when there was MLSs in use and they weren't fully adopted yet, you saw do not advertise without listing broker's consent. In other words, the listing agent had the right to all the leads from it. That's going to lead into what Marx was saying about listing agency teams and the buyers going directly to the listing agent. And I have no doubt that's going to occur. But you were talking about the impact on the other industry, and Marx is 100% correct about homes.com. They are going to become the dominant player. That's a given at this point. But the other part of that affects LOs and everyone else in the industry and why there's going to be such a huge displacement goes to the lead generation and the lead sale aspects. Now, Marx touched on that, in that the buyer lead generation economically isn't going to be feasible. But there's another problem here, and that is some of the new rules from the FCC and the CFPB is getting in on this, is what you can do with a buyer lead. And that is you cannot solicit unless you have direct consent. So the whole concept of selling buyer leads may not even be practical anymore, even if you can generate them. So that's going to lead to some huge displacement. And if you eliminate the buyer's agents, where the buyers go directly to the listing agent, well, title reps market buyer's agents, loan officers market buyer agents. If they don't exist or they no longer have control of the lead, their source just disappeared as well. The shakeup's going to be pretty severe, and there's definitely going to be some winners and losers. And the margins are already too tight to begin with not enough transactions to go around for the amount of individuals in the industry. So there's a lot going on here that you can't even, we could spend 2 hours on every single item that Mark's touched on alone here and not get to it all. It's just not that simple. And there's a lot of unintended consequences occurring.
And something tells me, Mike, there is going to be a lot of time spent in the coming days, weeks, months, and even years on kind of what's next. And I want to hit on what you just said there. I'm going to stay with you, Mike. Biggest unintended consequences. I think we've touched on a few of them already, but with this kind of a change, there's going to be there'll be ripples, right? So other unintended consequences.
The reputation of realtors in general is going down even further than it was before. People are now aware of how much they actually get paid on the buyer side, when a lot of buyers were told, oh, don't worry about me, I get paid by the seller, it doesn't cost you anything. And the buyers are realizing, yeah, it did cost them something. So there's a lot of aspects there. I think the biggest problem I see right now are some of the videos on TikTok. You've got so many realtors out there whining and complaining and bitching and moaning. The reputation of the industry, was here, and it's going down very, very rapidly. And I don't think the media has even got into this yet, to where the consumers are really aware of what's happening and how bad it's getting. But I think the realtors are their own worst enemy at the moment.
I would agree. It's a very small blip for consumers at the moment. It won't be much longer, especially summer selling season.
The Gen Zers especially. I mean, they're kind of the target market right now for buyers. They're purchasing at a younger age than even the baby boomers did. I mean, by the age of 24, about 28% of Gen Zers have bought a house or are in the process of it. Wow. They watch all this stuff, and they're the first digitally native group, and that is who you're marketing to right now. And they watch this stuff on TikTok, and their desire to work with the realtor is diminishing daily, is what we're seeing. Wow.
So it's a PR issue here as well. Optics.
It's become a massive optics issue.
Marx, you look like you want to add something there.
No, I think what Michael said was spot on. I mean, the optics are terrible. I think the bigger piece to this as well is, don't forget the politics involved in this. And the politics is enormous, and especially within the last week. And so one of the main reasons that this case was even brought forward was it was a pissing match between the AARP and NAR. AARP has traditionally given a lot more money to Democratic candidates, congressional candidates, and Senate candidates. NAR has traditionally given more money to Republican candidates. This was a way for the White House and the Department of Justice to come in and kneecap NAR and knock out that ability for that lobbying group to give money to their enemies, so to speak. So that is a major piece to all this. And if you think that's not true, it's absolutely true. You can look at Biden's comments or his press secretaries last week, where she called real estate commissions junk fees. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these things, the politics in this is real. It's significant, and there is no one at the helm at NAR anywhere in the building to fight back against that, and that's doing a real disservice to people who are legitimate real estate agents and brokers who do things the right way and represent their customers. That's tragic to me. And who's the biggest loser? It's the first-time home buyer, because they're not going to know where to go. They're not really going to have that level of protection that they had in the past.
Well, so I take it you don't back the theory out there that's been floated that this will improve affordability for houses, will bring housing costs down?
I have to disagree on that one a little bit. I think in some ways it will. It'll crush everybody's margins.
Yeah.
But if the commissions get reduced and you're going to go to online loan origination, so the LOs are going to lose their origination fee, more than likely their commission. Title will be ordered online, so the title reps lose commission. And then the natural market functions are going to take over. So there will be downward pressure on pricings, and to some extent, homes will become slightly more affordable. Is it this panacea that the White House is making it out to be? No. But there is some dollars there that will flow back to the consumer. And the consumer's getting smart enough where they're going to see those dollars and want them back. Plain and simple. Now, what Mark said about AARP and NAR, I think is hilarious because it's been going on for years. AARP lobbied to get commissions. You mentioned that you're a senior citizen. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, so you follow this close than I do, but didn't AARP try to get a bill through Congress to cap commissions at 5% for senior citizens at one point?
Yeah, they did.
It's been going on for years. And, and NAR finally lost. It's that simple. But I think a lot of it has to do with the industry shooting themselves in the foot. They've screamed buyer representation. I can name a couple of states where to become a licensed real estate agent and represent this buyer's interests, you need a total of $69 to take a 40-hour online course. Okay. So there's been no barriers to entry. It's too easy to become an agent, and there's too many poor quality agents. So the arguments to pay this kind of money for such poor representation by such untrained individuals, they're justified. The industry was never policed. The barriers to entry were way too low. And you have a lot of people in this industry that really are not very qualified and should not be paid what they were getting paid. And that's what everybody is starting to see. And somebody just has to say, this is the truth, guys. The emperor has no clothes.
Yeah. Now, a lot of those guys, they sold one or two properties a year, right? They're a housewife with a second income. A lot of that's all going to disappear.
Correct. And it should have a long time ago. Okay. And that's where the real issue is. The industry did not police itself. And there's reasons for that. Now, the clear cooperation policy, which is where all this came from. Now, do I believe NAR was sincere when they said, yes, it'll make homes more accessible to more buyers? Buyers will have more choice and representation? Absolutely, I do. But going back to do not advertise without listing broker's consent, the first goal of any organization is to survive. So what the clear cooperation policy did, and Marx mentioned this earlier, and this is what it's going back to, you're going to have a listing agency that controls the inventory. And if you want to see that house, you go to that agency, which means they will have their buyers agents teams under them. All right. Clear cooperation made it that you couldn't hold exclusive listings. Any agent could show any other listing. Well, how are you a buyer's agent? And how can you represent a buyer if you have no inventory to show them? That's what's going to occur. So that whole policy was to give weak agents that had no inventory of their own something to show and to keep them in business. Granted, they might have been a housewife, as was just mentioned, selling 2 homes a year, but it didn't matter if they sold 1 home, 10 homes, 100 or 0 homes. They still paid their NAR's dues and gave NAR money for their political action. Okay, that's what that was all about. It was about keeping the NAR membership higher and allowing people who normally would not be able to survive in the business to at least stay members of NAR and licensed. That's really what that whole policy was about. Otherwise, you would have listing brokerages, a couple that would dominate the market. Okay. And instead of having 1,000 realtors in a market, you'd only need 20. And 20 would only pay 20 dues, whereas 1,000 pay 1,000 membership dues. It's that simple. And that's what it always was. And everybody knew it was. And for the agents out there to bitch and whine and say, oh, we got betrayed and everything else. No, you just never opened your eyes. Wow. It's that simple.
So, Mike, I'm going to come back to you, and maybe this is almost an aside or an irrelevant question at this point. Is this the end of NAR?
I don't know if it's totally the end. They've survived. This is not the first time they've been sued for antitrust. It's not the first time they've been knocked. For some reason, they keep coming back around. I think they will exist in some form. Will they ever be as powerful as they were? Probably not. And I think a lot of the agents, a lot of agents don't like NAR. They don't like some of the rules they impose. They consider them more than a nuisance than a benefit. And that's always been the case with the group. So a lot of people only joined NAR because they had to, and if they wanted access to the local MLSs. So now you have the MLSs probably disappearing eventually, as Homes.com is probably in a position to create a national MLS and do a much better job. And I agree with that is probably the eventual outcome. So if you don't have to pay realtor dues just to get on the MLS to get inventory, which now doesn't exist that way anyway, where's the money for NAR is my question.
Good question. Marx, how about you? Is that it for NAR?
No, I mean, I think NAR is gonna sustain itself. I think what they may wind up doing is they may wind up filing for bankruptcy reorganization down line with the lower dues. I mean, they do have some, at least they did have some significant assets behind them. But as Michael said, I think that there is some serious animosity between the agents and NAR and its leadership and its executives over there and the brokers. It wouldn't surprise me in the least to see a group to see the real estate brokers themselves as entities break away from NAR and join a group like Leading Real Estate or Realty Alliance or some trade, or even Leading RE, some trade organization that will represent the brokers' interests, because those weren't represented at all in this settlement. It was clear as day, which has got these folks beyond livid. And as a result of that, you're seeing consolidation among some of the top 100 real estate brokerages in the country right now, where they're talking about where they're getting ready to be acquired. It hadn't been announced, but a number of them are now going to be bought. And so you'll see a large number of very well-capitalized corporate owners, hedge funds, pension funds that will own the biggest of the biggest brokerages. And then you'll have a bunch of, onesies and become a mom and pop real estate brokerages underneath. But the days of and medium-sized companies, they're going to struggle unless they can get some ancillary income. And that is really where I see the biggest change in the industry, is that everybody and their mother is going to have property and casualty insurance, mortgage, and title. And if they don't, they're gone. They're not in the industry.
Yeah, and our settlement only included companies that made less than $2 billion a year in revenue, and that sounds like a big number, but in our industry, that's not a really big number.
Well, let me add something on that $2 billion number too. That $2 billion number was a T35 that everybody voluntarily provided their stats for. A number of these brokerages that were exempted, they padded their stats. They didn't do over 2 billion. Or if they did do 2 billion, it involved their property management division. It involved all sorts of other non-residential components. So really, truly, those numbers were they should be out of the they should be in the consent order and not opted out. And that's an interesting piece that has kind of come to my attention the last few days.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to laugh because he's 100% correct. I mean, I've owned franchises, I've owned regions for franchises. When you start looking at numbers for a real estate office, it's real simple. You believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. They are notorious for padding their numbers to make themselves appear bigger, to make their market share look greater as a recruiting tool. And half of them are just egomaniacs. It's very, very common. So I think a lot of those are going to be off. And when they actually have to start paying money, the truth will come out on those numbers too. To his previous thing that he mentioned, as the consolidation and then the ancillaries, yes and no, at least from my perspective. The margins on brokers have been getting crushed year after year simply because the agents all expect too much money. You've gone from a broker-centric business model to an agent-centric business model. So the CCI and the company dollars are much lower than they've ever been. Now with too few transactions to go on, it's going to go worse. But the ancillary issue, and in my operations, we had multiple offices, we had franchises, we had our title company, we had our loan company, we had all those things. But it was a lot easier to do back then. But I'm going to go back to the changes in the way sales leads can be sold and traded between entities, and the fact that you need direct consent from the consumer, no more blanket consents if these rules go through. And Mark, you may have a better update on how close they are to implementing them. But that's going to throw some major hurdles to even the brokers adding in ancillaries. And what are they going to add? Title, escrow, loan, insurance, all of those margins are getting crushed. And you've got the exact same people that are trying to sell those products, okay, that also don't have any business. So it's going to be really cutthroat. There's not enough transactions and not enough money to go around for the people that are in this industry right now. There's no two ways about that. They're going to be forced out. I mean, if you add up just rough numbers, if you add up the real estate agents, the loan officers, the insurance agents, the title reps, the title officers, you've gone from 6 million transactions to 4. You've lost a third of the business already over that. And the margins are getting tighter and tighter. You're talking about, 1 to 2 million people being unemployed, are no longer being able to support themselves, that were independent contractors or commissioned people in here. There's a massive revenue loss here. And there's not enough money to go around for these people, which goes back to, may I supersize that for you? So you better learn something. My point is not to be derogatory. It's the point is you better learn something different real fast.
Wow.
And the legal aspects may drag out for years. I think the consumer driven aspects of this are going to happen much faster.
So,
go ahead, Kevin, but then we got to wrap this up. There's a lot we could talk about here today, but go ahead, shoot your question out there.
well, just real quick, Mike. I mean, you're a broker and you've been in real estate business a long time. So, what would your business model look like if this was in effect today?
Well, I'm a retired broker. I sold out in 2012. So I still train a lot of brokers and work with them in different aspects of the industry. But honestly, I don't know if I'd ever want to be a broker again and own offices again. Owning a brokerage office is basically an adult daycare center, and it's got enough of its headaches. And back in the day when you could run 40% EBITDA, that was worth putting up with. I'm not sure I'd put up with it today. So do I think there's another business model? Yes. Do I think you can still make money and there's opportunities? Yes. And I am working on those. Am I prepared to give those up on the show right now? No, I am not.
Fair enough. On that note, Marx, any final thoughts from you? And Mike, if you have any as well. I didn't tee it up that way, but this is just the beginning. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more to do. But there's only so much we could do in 30 minutes or so. But any final thoughts from you, Marx, or from anyone really?
The biggest one I would say is if I were a broker of a franchise, regardless if your franchisor is telling you that you're exempted from the settlement or not, that we got you out of the settlement, I think you're going to see clawbacks by some franchisors against their franchisees to claw back the money that they have paid out as part of the settlement. Antitrust is a provision in many of these franchisor agreements, and the franchisees typically have personal guarantees to the franchisor as well. So that's one thing to kind of keep an eye on is post settlement, assuming that the judge signs off on this and DOJ signs off and the objectors get taken care of. The second part to that is the real estate agents. So the real estate agents are in the same, for some of these franchises, are in the same position that their franchisee is under their independent contractor agreements that some of these that I've read. The agents themselves are liable for any antitrust violations that take place. So, it's going to be, you're going to have somebody coming back downstream potentially, at least among some of these franchisors, to go back and recoup whatever money they can get. And that's something that has not been discussed at all. And, it's something that people need to talk about because it does impact people's lives going forward.
Yeah. Can I just add on to that?
Sure.
We're kind of cheating because Marx and I have been discussing these cases for years, including the independent contractor agreements. Most realtors never read theirs, and the agents aren't aware that as independent contractors, if their brokerage gets sued, their commissions get clawed back as well. So the brokerage may not do it, but the creditors sure as hell might. And I don't think that's really been spoken about at all in the real estate industry. And nobody's explaining to the agents going, hey, you may be liable for this stuff. And they may come back after you because if they get a judgment against the brokerage, they're going to see what the brokerage assets are. and the brokerage's assets are these independent contractor agreements, and there's clawbacks in them. Marx, we need to do a whole show on this because I don't think they understand that.
And you have the same thing with NAR. Don't think that NAR may not claw back, go after all of its members and claw back some of its dollars it's spent up. Wow. It wouldn't surprise me if that didn't take place as well. It'd be suicide if they did it, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, you know what? I owe an answer that was asked me. What would I do if I had a brokerage today? Honestly, I would crash the corp, BK it out, and start a new corporation tomorrow without any liabilities. Hypothetically.
Wow. Well, gentlemen, on that note, we're going to go ahead and take off. We're probably going to have you both back on again. Something tells me that we have not heard the last of this topic in the least. I want to thank my special guest, Michael Krein. Michael, you have something coming out called House Karma. You want to tell folks briefly what that is and why they should be paying attention?
Oh, I could spend days talking about what we're doing at House Karma. Basically, we're in the business of making houses more affordable, focusing on first-time home buyers and minorities, and basically educating consumers, bringing them into our funnel, getting them qualified for the loan, getting them prepared to buy a house, educating them on how to buy a house, and helping them get their first house. So we're about creating first-time home ownership opportunities, helping restore neighborhoods, and creating opportunities. And you'll be hearing a lot more about us very shortly.
Believe him when he says that, folks. And Marx, would you like to pitch something? I know you're still on your world speaking tour. You're going to be announced at a few places shortly. Anything you'd like to share before we go?
No. It's just fun watching this circus develop. I mean, there's never anything that's static in this industry.
So. Hey, I just put people in the papers, not my circus, not my monkeys. On that note, gentlemen, thank you for your time. As always, thank you to Rick Grant and Kevin Breeland, the other two of the three guys. Thanks to all of you for watching. Again, you have a topic idea for us, you want to be on the show or know someone we should ask on, let us know. There's contact information. And as always, your thumbs up are appreciated. And with that, as I understand it, the CFPB studies have also suggested that mortgage podcasts are also contributing to the high cost of home ownership these days. So we're going to do our part here and sign off a little early. Thanks, everybody.